Let's get into it. So we're going to be discussing our top 10 favorite PlayStation games there. Since it is PlayStation, it's its 30th year anniversary, and they've done some things out there for its 30th year anniversary. There, they did a thing where you can get an update there on the PlayStation 5, where you can have your own customized intro there for it.
They said that would be temporary, unfortunately.
Yeah, which wish it was permanent. Yeah, but you can do it like you can have the opening like all through all the PlayStation consoles, all the way from PlayStation 1 to now. So I thought that was a cool little touch. They did that. You can spend way too much money on a controller on the PS5 controller that looks like that resembles the PS1 controller there, but a lot of people liked it. A lot of people picked it up. So I don't know how well it did sales wise,
That's
but I saw a lot of
it.
people like
Probably sold out.
yeah.
It
So
just being, I honestly think that stuff almost always works on people.
so yeah, that which was say it looked cool, but I wasn't like I think the price was what like over $100, I think, for it.
Yeah, if I'm gonna spend that much on a controller, I'm gonna get one of those like crazy customized controllers where I can like take pieces of it off and like modulate it. Like if I'm gonna go that super pricey on a controller, I'm at least gonna do one that lets me kind of mess with it like that.
Yeah. Oh, here it is for okay. Here it is for $80. I thought it was much more than that.
Oh, that's
Um,
pretty much just the price of a normal controller.
yeah, so if it's yeah, so that's pretty good there. This one is like one of those, I guess, retro graded, like really souped up controllers. This is 220.
Is
Uh,
that okay? So that's the kind where you can like take pieces off of it and like put other pieces in, and
okay.
like customize it. So like that's like people who are doing like tournament fighting games and like really playing like professionally. That's like a controller for that type of player.
Yeah, okay. So you got that there. So yeah, you get that. So it probably I mean, resellers have probably got their hands on it trying to resell it and everything like that. But yes, they're doing that for it. And there was even a list by IGN which kind of sparked my idea to do this list there where they did a list of the best 100. They went to 100 of the best PlayStation games and they were trying to do exclusive, but then they were like, well, cuz if you do just exclusive, that's probably you can't really get to 100 there. You'd have to expand it a little bit more. So yeah, they did that.
I when I went through to like narrow down what my list was gonna be, I feel pretty sure I had to look through like close to 100 games to narrow it down. So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I think they could have at least done a little bit better of a job on that. But
Yeah. So their criteria was that, yeah, I guess the amount of time it's spent on the PlayStation and that kind of gone there. But then there are some games that like, that released on both consoles immediately. Like when it came like they have
mhm,
like Mass
like
Effect is
Red
on
Dead 2.
Red
I
Dead
am
2,
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect. It's like, yeah, I don't know about
The
that.
first Mass Effect was even an Xbox exclusive for a few years, and then the second one launched on both systems right away. But like, if anything, I'd associate Mass Effect with Xbox more.
Yeah,
So
I associate it more with Xbox too, yeah, because I remember getting an Xbox just to get Mass Effect, when that kinda came out there, so, yeah, so here is just gonna be games that were yeah, I think criteria for us is mainly exclusive to PlayStation, if not only on the PlayStation, or it was on PlayStation for a long period of time before it went over there, and crossed over to other consoles there, so, you get some like
like until the end of the console generation, I would say.
yeah, so you kinda got that, you got some honorable mentions, that you
Yeah,
wanted
just
to
a
discuss?
couple.
Yeah.
I could just rattle them off real quick. Castlevania Symphony of the Night for PS1, Crash Bandicoot 2, Infamous 2 on the PlayStation 3, Marvel's Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4, and Returnal for the PlayStation 5.
Okay.
All games that I wanted to get on my top 10 list, but there was other stuff that just kind of pushed it out. But it's just stuff that it's like the 5 games I struggled to cut out when I was at down to 15.
Okay. And what is your top 10 and why is it a 10 on your list?
So my 10th game on the list is Bloodborne, which was exclusively released for the PlayStation in 2015, I think. I actually worked at GameStop when that came out, um, which was even more horrifying than the game itself. But was this was for me. I didn't play this until way later, fairly recently, actually, in just the last couple of years. I was not into the Souls genre until I started streaming. So like 3 years ago now. And this one just has one. It's the only one of these that kind of franchise that's exclusive to the PlayStation. And then two, it has such a unique aesthetic amongst even the other Souls games because all of them are dark fantasy stuff, but this is full on Gothic Victorian horror. I'm a big horror fan. I really like the super morbid kind of eldritch horror. I mean, even thinking of something like Alan Wake or Control that touch on elements like that. This really is going full disgusting Lovecraft with it all. And then, you also have on top of this just really wonderful aesthetic and great creature design. You have the immaculate gameplay that From Software provides in all of their experiences. They always consistently nail these just really, really tight gameplay systems. If you've played any of the other games that they've done, it'll be pretty familiar. There's a formula you can recognize, but there's also a lot of stuff that is different. Like in this game, for instance, you don't have a shield at all. You have a gun, and the gun is your parry mechanic. So there's some weird stuff that I've seen here that a lot of other games don't do. You even got a quick glimpse there of him kind of unsheathing the weapon. There's a lot less weapons in this game than other Souls games, but every weapon has like two forms. So like basically every weapon is like two different things at the same time. You kind of have to learn what situations they apply to in really interesting ways. But yeah, this was for me. This is like one of the best games of its generation. Amazing horror title, but also with that sleek, consistent From Software gameplay design.
Okay. This obviously big hit there, for PlayStation there, Bloodborne. I have not played Bloodborne myself, but I know people have talked about the difficulty of the game, and the immersiveness of the game there. And like you said, this released in 2015 there. And then some people even cited this being one of the greatest video games ever made. There that has that praise kind of going towards it. And it says the game sold 7.46 million copies by February 2022, with that as well. So very, very big success for PlayStation there, for Bloodborne. Um, very nice. I'm gonna pull up my top 10 here for this, and it is a game that you are familiar with. And I wouldn't say it's the best of the franchise there. I think there are other ones better. But this was the first game I played of this franchise, and it really introduced me to it. So I'll go ahead and give it to my number 10 spot there. And that is going to be for Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots there. And a lot of people talked about this game when it came out, especially like, hey, the people was like, well, shit, when can I play the game? You know what I mean? It seems like I'm just setting the controller down and letting things just kind of go. So this is kind of meant as the swan song a little bit to the Metal Gear franchise there. Everything culminating in one. Now, this didn't have the impact on me, like obviously a people or a person like you who played all these games all the way leading up to it. I've only played a few of the Metal Gear games, even after this one. But yeah, I mean, this was very cinematic there, very big, very epic kind there. I remember playing that old man boss fight there, where you're just slugging each other. You kind of got that kind of going on. But yeah, I mean, this was even with people joke about that, like I said, with these the cutscenes in this. Still very good storytelling in this. I'd say Kojima and with Metal Gear Solid 4 here. What's some of your thoughts on it?
Oh, I think this is a fantastic game. It definitely gets jokes made at it about the ratio of gameplay to cutscene. Um, but I have two responses to that. One's a joke, one's serious. The joke is, hey, maybe Kojima just meant for the control being taken away from the player to be part of the commentary on the automation of war. I don't know. I could even see him saying something like that. But then the serious answer, I think, is also just that like especially with Metal Gear Solid 2, that game introduces so many things and creates such a convoluted sense of what's going on that I think you kind of needed Metal Gear Solid 4 to be so cutscene heavy and to be so story heavy, just to kind of pull all the threads cleanly out and kind of make sense of the franchise as a whole. Like I said, it is the swan song. They did make a five, but that's kind of part of the prequel storyline. That is, it's like a sequel to the third game more. Like four is the end. Four is the ending of this franchise. It wraps everything up. Yeah, you could do spin-offs or like little things in between the other games if you wanted, but like this is a conclusion, and I think it's a very satisfying conclusion. It leaves pretty much no stone unturned for the rest of the franchise. I mean, there's like probably stuff that one guy in the corner of the internet was going, but what about this? And they're like, and Kojima's like, I got even that I was explaining in this. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic game.
All right. That was my number 10. What's your number 9?
Number nine for me is Journey, which I believe came out around 2010 or 2011. Forgive me, I'm not remembering the exact release date there. But I think this was kind of in the early days of indie games really feeling like they were taking off as kind of their
2012.
own. 2012, okay. This felt like it was really when indie games were really taking off and carving out their own place in the industry and pushing on like what kind of thing can we make a big immersive video game experience. And this is a game that has no combat. You really don't do much other than move, and there's one button that you can kind of interact with the environment a little bit. But this is there's not a lot else to it in terms of the controls, but the environment and the music and the completely nonverbal storytelling of this, I think, is able to achieve so much. That like, I remember playing this, and like my grandma that thought video games were a stupid waste of time would sit down and be like, "Oh my God, this is mesmerizing." So I feel like when a video game is able to capture people's attention like that like don't even like games or understand games, and it's still able to kind of suck them in and hold them as just a piece of art, I think that really says something. And I think this game is beautiful, and then it's also got this really incredible sense of multiplayer, which I don't know if I've ever seen since, where there's no you're not choosing to play this as a multiplayer game, but as you're going through, occasionally you might run across another person, and maybe you'll travel together a little bit. And I think it just really has this great little concise story about just the journey of life and its ups and downs, and kind of, hey, maybe you'll experience some of it with other people and parts, and just kind of the way that life moves. I think it's a really profound video game experience.
This is another game that is kind of considered one of the greatest video games of all time. A lot of people praise the visual and auditory art of it, as well as its sense of companionship there in the game as well. So yeah, and it won several Game of the Year awards when this came out. Also had some other awards and nominations, including Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media at the 2013 Grammy Awards. So it also had that kind of going for it as well. So yeah, it was highly, highly praised, highly kind of critically acclaimed there for Journey there. All right, I'm gonna give my number 9 pick right here. And that is going to be for the video game Crash Bandicoot, the very, very first one, back in 1996 when this game came out there. Classic kind of platform that you kind of got here. I mean, Crash Bandicoot was kind of one of the first big mascots, I think, of the PlayStation console there. This came out in the PlayStation 1 there. So yeah, he was kind of one of the big figures there. So back before Crash Bandicoot was just a mini game and Uncharted, I mean, he had his own thing kinda going on. So very nice, and man, this was I remember this being so much fun. It's such a good time playing this, as a kid there on the PlayStation 1 console. Even though the PlayStation 1 console is not my favorite of them, I think 2, just with the library, everybody talks about the library of the PlayStation 2 console is just so great there, and still to this day, it's one of the highest selling consoles of all time with
I
PlayStation.
think it is still the highest.
Still the highest of all time, just with that library. But yeah, I mean, Crash Bandicoot, Sony PlayStation owes a lot of its success today because of Crash Bandicoot and how well that game did for this game. What is kind of your memories of Crash Bandicoot?
Oh, I have so many fond memories of this franchise. I put the second game on my honorable mentions because I wanted to represent it in there a little bit somewhere. But yeah, I mean the whole original trilogy really on the PlayStation was excellent. I mean, it was one of the defining games of the platform. It got Naughty Dog started, which is today still this industry giant, especially for like PlayStation exclusive stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was a delightful mascot. I loved the gameplay. I mean, 3D platforming can be tricky, and especially like the early days of 3D platforming. It's like, yeah, Mario does it perfectly, but like some games, had a hard time kind of making that transition from 2 to 3D. Sonic. But Crash Bandicoot, I think, came right out of the gate, did it perfectly. It's got I think, a tough but fair difficulty to it. Really memorable character designs, environment, the music is that music is so fantastic. Like remaster that they did a few years back. I went back and played all of them again, and yeah, they're really really fantastic games. One of like if I had kids and they wanted to get into games at all, one of the first things I would be like, this is age appropriate. It would be Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, and like I said, this did really well. So the game went on to sell over 6 million units at the time of its release, making it one of the best-selling PlayStation games there, and the highest-selling ranked on sales in the United States there. So yeah, big success there for this game. And like you said, also this was Naughty Dog, one of their first big hits there. With this, so they helped them kind of get to the success where they are today as well. So yeah, pretty big there for Crash Bandicoot. Sage, you're gonna give us your number 8.
My number 8 is Devil May Cry 3 for the PlayStation 2. Uh, and one thing I did too is when I put games on this list that are part of a franchise with multiple entries, I went for the best one and also whatever one I felt represented like exclusivity to the PlayStation the most. And this third game was, I think, yeah, one of the big giants of the PlayStation 2. And the kind of the giant of this franchise as well. There, I has very few. I mean, it's happened a couple times with like Bayonetta, but which was the same director as this as well, Hideki Kamiya. But there's seldom been like games or action games that have been this level of stylish and just fun and just really giving you this sense of just kind of unrelenting, I guess, style. I know I said style already, but really just so purely like rule of cool. We don't care if it makes sense or if there's any sort of practicality in the design here, like the size of the swords or the powers. Like you get a guitar that shoots like thunder out of it. It's just fun, and it just understands what it is to such a degree, and then even still has these earnest and kind of endearing characters. I mean, Dante in this game is like almost to the personality of a Ninja Turtle. How can you not have fun with that?
Yeah. Spoiler alert, this is on my list as well. I mean, this is one of my favorite video games, not only just PlayStation video games, but just favorite video games of all time. It's in my top 5 there. This was a defining game for the hack and slash genre there. I mean, this is, yeah, considered one of the greatest hack and slash video games of all time there. And this especially this third game coming off a kind of poorly reviewed and mediocre second game as well. So that was also very impressive that they were able to bounce back Capcom with this game. And this game released here 2005. That this game released there, and this released on the PlayStation 2. Um, yeah, for all the things you mentioned, I mean, man, this is just yeah, so much fun to play there, and the action and combat there. This was groundbreaking at the time of when this came out. There, what they kind of did, a lot of they did with this, and with the Dante character there. This is where the Dante character. I mean, because he had a little bit of a personality, but here where you get to really see it a lot more in this third game, I think.
He's really stoic in the first one, like
Yeah,
really stoic. He doesn't express that much. Like the first, and I like the first game, but it definitely does not have the sense of personality that this does. And this is also meant to be a prequel too, so he's like, oh, he's a little younger, and so maybe he's a little more immature versus like the first one. But really, it just came to define what his personality should be like as a whole. I mean, even you look at like the fifth game that came out a lot more recently, and it's so clear that 3 defined what Dante should be, even in that game.
yeah. Like in 5, he's dancing with a cowboy hat and everything
Yeah,
like that, so he's doing that, so yeah. Yeah, and then we didn't get a sequel to this game until when did the 4th one that was what, 2016? 20
Devil May Cry 4 was 2008 or 9, I think.
Okay.
Which and
Yeah.
then I mean, four is more well liked than two, but you know,
Oh,
I think
2008.
four also was a little lukewarm, at least for like me. I didn't love four. It's kind of like every the even numbered games are always disappointing in this franchise. Because then I thought five, which was 2019, was a huge bounce back after four. That's like the only other one I'd say is like close to the same quality that three is.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. 4 came out in '08. And do you think it was just because like, they introduced this new character and you're playing through most of him through the game and then
I mean, part of it's that it was just introducing a new character. Sometimes that can always, put off some people. But I also just think Nero's personality is just not that interesting a personality in the fourth game. He's just not. I don't know. He just doesn't really work that well to me. He's a lot more of the kind of mid 2000s emo kind of
Mm,
thing, which I just like. I want fun. I want fun Dante personality. And in to be fair, I think in the fifth game they brought Nero back, and I liked Nero a lot in the fifth game. I thought they totally fixed him and made him way better. But then the other thing is that Devil May Cry 4 is also like you play half the game as Nero, and then you switch to Dante, and then the second half of the game is just backtracking through all of the same environments until you get to the first level. Like it's literally they just recycled like the first half of the game for the second half. So that also kind of hurt it a lot too.
mm, yeah. So that was your number 8 pick, and I'm gonna be doing my number 8 pick, and my number 8 pick is going to be you already said the sequel to this in your honorable mentions, but I got the very first one on my list here, and that is going to be for Infamous. Infamous there. So this game, um, so kind of back, I would say, yeah, it was kind of early 2000s. There was a lot of media of like, it seemed like studios were trying to do superhero stuff without doing actually any established characters, and they were trying to make their own. Like they were doing a lot of movies like Jumper and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's kind of a little bit with this game. Like it was kind of like a superhero type game that you had here, but it was with a completely original character who had the power of electricity there. He's not black, so it's time they diverted from that trope a little bit there with that. So yeah, but this was really good. I thought here. I think the sequel is also very good as well. What they do with that, what they do with the sequel. But yeah, this also has a great benefit there of what you do with the powers and how they're able to expand the abilities there he has with electricity and different things he does there. You see a little bit in the trailer. He's able to kind of fly a little bit with air, throw kind of like bombs and everything with the electricity. So he does a lot of fun stuff there. Um, I think, I keep hearing rumors that they may bring this back or may do, like, a remastered of this potentially. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard that too. Nothing that I feel like has been from like a super concretely trustworthy source. So I'm kind of like gun shy on believing it. But I think this game could totally use just that little bit of a facelift. I played it, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 years ago again. I think I played both one and two all the way through. And yeah, I mean, I think these both of them are really great superhero games, some of the best, especially yeah, for trying to do the like original character stuff. And in like the early 2000s, we had like the Spider-Man movie tie-in games, Ultimate Alliance, Hulk Ultimate Destruction, Punisher Game. There's a bunch of stuff in like the really early 2000s. Kind of the second half of the 2000s, because this was 2007 or 8, I think. Um,
Yeah,
this
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 game
was
it
the
was
PS3.
'09. Yeah, on the
Oh,
PS3.
nine, okay. But yeah, kind of starting right around then, and then really across the whole 2010s. Other than maybe we had the Batman Arkham games, then we eventually got the Insomniac Spider-Man stuff. But I feel like we really stopped getting a lot of superhero games, and so this came in kind of right at the time when they weren't doing a lot of superhero games in general anymore. And I thought not to, make too much of a pun, but it really kind of stole the thunder on that side of things and was able to make an impact when people just were not trying to get into that space. And this came along and just did such a good, I think, superhero game. And like you said, there's a lot they do with the powers. I think more than you would expect for like just electricity. They're really really creative and do some really cool stuff with it. Um, yeah, I think this is a all-time banger. I actually remember I this was the first game I got for my PS3, and I actually bought the game before I had the system because I was so excited to play it. I just went and I bought Infamous, and I'm like, I don't even know when I'm getting a PS3, but I know it'll be sometime this year. So I'm just gonna have Infamous ready to go.
Yeah. And, yeah. and there was a sequel there that also came out on the PlayStation 3. And I know the most recent thing they did was the infamous Second Son. I didn't play that because I heard it was kind of mediocre, so I never got into it.
Yeah, it was okay. Some of the powers were cool. Some of what they did with the powers and the traversal across the city is kind of fun. But the story is pretty weak, and it just felt like they wrapped it up so well with two that it felt like a really forced extension of the franchise. Like it really was like, all right, you guys didn't plan for there to be another one. You thought you were ending it, and then somehow you got roped back into doing another one. That's kind of how I felt. And then uh, not Nolan North. What's the other white dude that's like in every video game?
Oh,
Uh,
Trey
Troy Baker.
Troy Baker, yeah.
Yeah, him as the Native American main character was a little.
Mm. Yeah, but it said Infamous Second Son said the game sold over 1 million units within 9 days of its release and 6 million units by June 2019, making it the fastest selling entry of the Infamous series and one of the best
Wow.
selling PlayStation 4 games. So,
I think part of that, I mean, I'm sure part of it is fans of the previous two were excited, looking forward to it. I bought it when it came out. And then on top of that, I also think graphically, visually, and just what it's able to do with its world and kind of the particle effects and whatnot and the graphics, it was a really good almost tech demo showcase of like what the PlayStation 4 could do when that system first came out.
mm.
So, even though I think it's got a bit of a weak story and it's not great compared to the other two, it still was really technologically impressive. So
Yeah. So, Sage, give us your seventh pick.
my seventh is Ghost of Tsushima. Go a little more modern with this one. From the same studio that did the infamous games and Sly Cooper before that. I loved this game so much. I think this is the best open world game like in the modern era, in my opinion. I think it is able to do it like at a time where I feel kind of fatigued with open world games. I think this was able to come in and do it to such a artistic level and also to make me never feel like I was wasting my time. A lot of open world games nowadays, there's just like a million things to collect, and it's like, why am I actually picking these things up? But here, even when there are collectibles that aren't influencing the gameplay, there's story that's really being invested here. And I'm not, any expert by any means for history, but I like history a lot. I like learning history a lot. I think the history of the Mongol Empire is particularly interesting and underrated uh, thing and subject in history to learn about. And so for this game to kind of be about the Mongol invasion of Japan, and it's fictionalizing it to some degree. In real life, the Mongols really didn't land on Japan very much at all. So like, we're kind of, we're fictionalizing this to tell the story. But I think that what they do here is so interesting because they're able to still add a lot of real and thoughtful history contextually to the experience. And I think also even as just a fictional narrative, it's really great. There's this great story between the main character and his uncle about kind of the rigidity and almost romanticization of what the samurai are thought to be versus what they really were, and the kind of moral conflict of the characters struggling to either follow that tradition or to do what they feel is right and in a way betray the honor that is just so cherished within that culture. And I think it's a really interesting struggle, and it's a really interesting comment and exploration of some really real history. And then I think the gameplay is just so fun. The samurai battles here are so well done, and it's like what, a couple strikes for an enemy and they're down. It's a little more real in terms of that. Like you're not hitting them a million times to get rid of an enemy. Like just a slice or two of a sword will kill them. But it's all about like being methodical and how you place those strikes and dodges and parries and all that. And you end up with a combat system that I think is so unique. It's yet to really be touched. I think anything similar has not been done. And eat your heart out, Assassin's Creed, because people wanted you to do this for a decade, and well, now you're trying, but I think it might be too late because Ghost of Tsushima already did it.
Uh-huh. This is some of the combat that you got here in the game there, and this is a pretty big game. I mean, a lot of hours you can devote to this game there, and a multiplayer as well. You kind of got there with that. This is on my backlog of games to play. There I have it. I have not checked it out yet, and there's also like you mentioned, getting to the history there. You do a lot with that. There is a mode you can do with this game where you can switch it to Japanese, so you can have it just Japanese there. Even though I heard that the lip syncing is kind of off with the Japanese,
Yeah,
uh, so that's kind of a little bit of a downside there. And you can switch
there's
it
also a
to
black and white mode.
yeah, black and white Kurosawa mode there, as they call it. So you can switch it to there. That's a pretty cool thing you can do with that. This game came out in 2020 there. It came on the PlayStation 5 on 2021. And this was kind of one of the games there that was like, hey, this is the power of this hardware, the expansiveness of it, how gorgeous this kind of look, big open world type thing here. So it has sold over 13 million units by September 2024, so it's done incredibly well there. When this game came out, it was nominated for numerous of awards, including Game of the Year, so it was very successful there. With that, do you think that it's too early for this game to be in like the greatest games of all time conversation, or
Um, I I don't think so. I think it could be talked about in that context. I think it's able to achieve a lot and be really unique. And there's not a lot else that's if there was a lot of other games that felt very similar to it, I would say maybe not. But because I think it strikes out as such a unique experience, I think it maybe earns the right to be in that conversation a little sooner.
okay? So yeah, that was 7 for you. Was Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm gonna bring up my 7th pick, a game that I'm replaying right now at the moment, and that is going to be for Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus. If you love boss fights, and that's the only thing you love in a game, this game is for you because this game is nothing but boss fights. There, of you just traveling around here, killing all these different creatures there. It's almost like you feel like an asshole. I mean, the creatures really ain't doing nothing. They're just kind of minding their business, and then here you come, and you just kind of go around killing them. Yeah, a lot of people talked about this game, and then the studio, actually, they showed a trailer for a new game that they're developing now. That's kind of it's big mystery of how they're going to do it, and what the game is about and what the gameplay is. So it's just the initial trailer, but yeah, this was one of their first big ones here. This came out in '05, and this came out on the PlayStation 2. Now it's available on a lot of other consoles and systems. There, you can play it right now digitally there on PlayStation 5. You can do that with this, but
And
yeah,
the remake was 2018.
yes, I believe so, yeah, the remake they did of it. Yeah, phenomenal game. This is also on the list of people considered one of the best games ever made, as well with this one. The boss fights are all very different, intriguing there of the different ways destroy and kill these creatures there, and, yeah, the trailer for this was the, remastered trailer, so yeah, 2018, you were right. So with that one, but, yeah, really, really fantastic work they did with that, and very, very, great kind of visual style they do there with this. Very minimal storytelling. I mean, it's pretty very fairly simple with this, so it's nothing too crazy there. What's your thoughts on Shadow of the Colossus?
Yeah. Well, hey, spoiler alert. This is also on my list coming up a little bit later. But I mean, I love this game. It is, I do think it's one of the greatest games of all time. It's one of the first video games I remember there being um, a larger conversation about can games be high art? Like, can games be more than just a fun experience? Can they be truly artistic and really make you feel something? And this is one of those games, one of the first ones that I think people really started having that conversation about. Because as you mentioned, you are killing these colossi, and I think the game does a lot to make you question if what you're doing is a good thing or not. And like something like Bioshock would come along a little bit later and really kind of point it in your face and go like, "Hey, video games are always telling you what to do, and you always listen to what they tell you what to do because it's just how it works, right?" But have you ever thought about the fact that that's how it works, or like that you're training your brain to kind of take orders in a way? I think this game kind of touched on that idea before Bioshock did, which I think makes it even more of like a landmark title for that reason. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Some of the greatest like fantasy I think that's ever been in a video game. The Colossi have so much personality and character in their designs, and like you said, it's all boss fights. And each boss fight, it's kind of like a little bit of a puzzle. Like the first couple are pretty simple, but as they go, they start adding kind of more and more kind of weird ways you have to kind of figure out how to actually do damage to these things or find these weak spots. And it's really some incredible game design. And yeah. I have like no complaints about that game whatsoever. It's like a perfect game to me.
So, Sage, what is your number 6?
Number six for me is Silent Hill 3. Now, I might have gone with Silent Hill 2, but it was only exclusive to the PS2 for a year before going to the Xbox, and I felt like that was not enough time for it to really be considered a PlayStation game. But Silent Hill 3 was exclusive for a much longer amount of time, and even when it did go to the Xbox, it was a very poorly made remaster of the game. That's not the preferable way to play it. But Silent Hill 3 is nonetheless, I think, a fantastic title in its own right, a absolutely wonderful horror game. It is not predicated on a twist so much the way that Silent Hill 2 is. It's a bit more upfront and straightforward with the narrative that's happening. It is the only direct sequel that the Silent Hill franchise actually ever had. It is a direct sequel to the first game. This is the very young girl, all grown up. That's the daughter of the character that you play as in the first one. In this game, I think it does a lot of cool things, but one of them is also that it tells a horror story from this very uniquely feminine perspective. It is a lot of
Damn, she's spraying this
in.
guy. Damn, she just full auto. Damn.
You also get a lot of weapons and stuff in that one that like. The other games are a little more minimal. In Silent Hill 3, you get like a katana, you get a machine gun, you get a lightsaber, you get like a Sailor Moon costume that gives you like eye lasers you can just like one shot enemies with. I mean, that's like New Game Plus type stuff, but even still, there's a lot of great horror in this that really kind of centers around feeling like you're being watched, feeling like you're being stalked in like these big open areas. It's less claustrophobic, but in a way not because of that. And a lot of this is probably the most grotesque, like in terms of gore horror throughout. I think all of the Silent Hill games. There's a lot of focus on kind of like forced birth and abortions and stuff in this one. So like there's some really grimy body horror and kind of like fear of like a woman's fear of her own body and what can kind of happen to it that's in this game. And again, just like Silent Hill 2, it's touching on subjects that for the time this came out, like no other video game was even remotely trying to touch something that I think was as mature as that, or as dark as that, but yet doing it in a way that did not feel exploitative or just shocking for shocking's sake. I mean, it really is, I think, a well told and thoughtful horror story that's got some real rich character to it. And yeah, Heather Mason is like one of the all time greatest like horror protagonists in any medium. Personally, if you ask me.
Yeah. And so do you think this is the second best Silent Hill game?
I think this is the second best one, and I
Okay.
I would I think they have to do a remake of the first one before they do a remake of three because it's a direct sequel and there's a continuity between them. But I wouldn't be lying if I said I didn't kind of just want to play a three remake first, and like part of me was kind of hoping we would just get that right away. But
Mm, okay. And would you so you would want to see this get remade before any other Silent Hill game?
yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you kind of have to do the first one first because it's a direct sequel. But on a personal level, I really do just kind of want to see three.
Okay. Yeah. So, that was the sixth one for you. There for Silent Hill. So I'll do my sixth one is a game that you already mentioned before, so I won't go too much time on that. And that is for Devil May Cry 3. Like I said, I mean, one of the greatest games ever. Loved it a lot. I mean, this sparked my love for the Devil May Cry franchise there. The sequel to this, Devil May Cry 4, don't like it as much there. Devil May Cry 5, I think, is a more on par with 3 as opposed to 4 is there as far as the fun and the entertainment and great combat there on that. And more of the Dante personality that we saw in 3 comes back there in 5. So, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff that happens in that game. All these kind of crazy weapons in 5, but yeah. And also just the battle between him and his, you see his half brother here as well. So we get the origin story of Dante in this one, with that. So yeah, this is just yeah, pure fun. I mean, at its best here, with Devil May Cry 3. Yeah, so let's go to your fifth one here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Number
well,
5 for me is The Last of Us.
mm, okay, yeah,
Now I remember when this game came out, and some people might, put this higher on the list. But I think it is a really amazing game. Um, it was such a pivot and such a change for Naughty Dog as a studio. Crash Bandicoot, Jack and Daxter, Uncharted, and then this. And it felt like really stretching their legs and experimenting and pushing video games forward in terms of like what kind of story that you could tell in a video game and how cinematic can you make a video game story. And I think from really engaging characters that have really, really great growth to Gustavo Santaola's like just amazing composition for the game's soundtrack. That's just I think out of this world good. Um, to like when this game came out, I maybe played the first couple hours, stepped away, and then I came back, and then like I swear I started in the evening, and I was basically like finishing the game, and I looked over and I was like, oh, there's sunlight coming through the window. I didn't even realize that I stayed up at a I truly just played the whole game in one go without even meaning to.
mm, yeah. This was huge when this game came out. I mean, 2013. This was one of those games that also like this is the power of the console. When this kind of
Yeah.
came out there with this coming out on the PlayStation 3. It's been remastered, so you can play an updated version of that with this there, so you can do that. And then
Like 5 times.
yeah, yeah, 25 times. Yeah, many different times they've remastered this, leading people to go like, "Damn, Naughty Dog is just doing remastered now." I mean, that's pretty much all they do. But they got a new game coming, so they got a new game coming that
It's
people can
true. Finally.
look forward to there. But the success of this, so yeah, this became one of the this is best-selling video game, selling over 1.3 million units in its first week and 17 million by April 2018. This was highly critically acclaimed. A lot of people had it on their many of like year-end awards, Game of the Year awards there by many publications. Best of the best video games ever made. A lot of people consider this high up there with that. And then of course came the sequel, Last of Us Part Two. There. Do you think for some people the sequel ruins the first Last of Us game? Are you one of those people there?
No, I actually I think the second one is quite good. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I like if I was going to give the first one like a 10, I'd give the second one like an 8. But I mean, I think that's still pretty positive. I've had criticisms of the second game, but in no way does it ruin the first game for me. I think most of what it does is pretty interesting and a pretty fitting continuation. With maybe a few exceptions kind of spread across the game. But I think it's a solid sequel. It's not going to blow your mind in the same way I think the first one did, especially because of the time the first game came out, the way that it pushed the medium forward, and what it did for games as a whole, and what kind of thing you could do in a video game story. I mean, it was kind of like getting a video game adaptation of Children of Men is
Mm,
really what it felt like at the time. And so like the second one is a sequel, and it is a less original just by the fact of it being a sequel, but it does some bold stuff. And maybe a lot of people don't like some of the bold things that it does, but I think that there's artistic integrity in that boldness that I respect a lot about the second game, even if I don't think it's perfect, and I do think there are some issues in it. But
yeah. And it's one of the rare video games that actually have a great video game adaptation. So with The Last of Us there on HBO, I like it quite a bit there. I know you said it's like, well, why, why watch it? I've already played it already. Yeah.
I fully believe that it is good, and especially for people who aren't going to play a video game. Like my dad watched that show. My dad is not going to play. Like if I handed him a controller, he would give me the most confused expression. He wouldn't know what to do with it. But he watched that show, and he was a really big fan of it. So I'm glad the show exists for people that aren't going to play the game. But for me, I felt like I just already had this kind of perfect story that I think a lot of its effectiveness is in the interactivity of physically having to actually be the one to go through the experience and protect this younger character, and the bond that they're building with the two characters over the course of the story is something that you are kind of firsthand experiencing by being the caretaker character. And just for me personally, I think an adaptation loses that. It loses a lot of why I like that story.
Mm, yeah. So that was your fifth pick. So I'm going to move on to my fifth pick there. Um, a game that's still exclusive basically to the PlayStation there. Sony's not going to be letting go of this character anytime soon. I don't think there. And that is going to be for Marvel's Spider-Man there. Marvel Spider-Man. You talked about it with Infamous a little bit there about all these superhero games that came out kind of in the early 2000s. And then especially you had all those like tie-in superhero games as well there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and with superhero games, I think there's been more bad ones than there have been really good ones or great ones. You know, you got people always bring up the Batman games. And then when this came out, Marvel Spider-Man, it was even the previous one was like, oh man, you're gonna make a Spider-Man game. Everybody loves Spider-Man. And big success, great game, really fantastic there. And also the story of this was also really amazing, what they did with that as well with Peter Parker. A lot of Spider-Man stories love to just revert him back to high school. It's like, oh, let's just bring him back to
Yeah.
high school again, reboot it. You know, he's getting to be in his mid late 20s. It's like, nope, got to reboot it again, back to him in high school. And this tackles more of a Peter that's a more young adult here, or because he's in his mid to late 20s in this game here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I believe they established he's been Spider-Man for 8 years, at least in the first one.
Yeah, so he's already been Spider-Man for a minute in this, so that was also really good. That's not just a retelling of the origin of Spider-Man again. And the combat with this, a lot of really great combat with this, a lot of stuff they do with Spider-Man and like the gadgets that he has with that, I think is also very fantastic. So yeah, I mean, this game was a great time playing this. There is Marvel Spider-Man 2. I think it's also really good there. I think the combination of him and Miles there, I think Miles is kind of somewhat more fun to play there in that game than Peter, but still a very, very good job they do with that game there. What's your feeling on Marvel Spider-Man?
Yeah, I absolutely love this game. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's definitely the best Spider-Man game that's been done so far, and I liked the second one a lot. I thought the gameplay was actually better in the second one, but I thought the story wasn't as good as the first one. And that is a big part of this first game. Is I think it actually really nails a Spider-Man story. And there's one moment, you know, near the end of this game that is very sad, and I'm like, that's like the perfect Spider-Man story moment right there. That's how you handle this. And they did something with I won't spoil it. I won't say exactly what it is, but they did something with the exact same character in Spider-Man No Way Home that I did not think worked. And I pointed at this game and went, this is how you're supposed to handle this type of moment. This is how this actually works and makes sense and feels earned. Um, and I think this is better than oh, even a lot of the Spider-Man movies that have been made. I think it just being a well-rounded story that expresses all these different aspects of the character. My only real criticism of the 2018 Marvel Spider-Man game is I wish that screwball character was not in it.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were gonna talk about the Mary Jane missions because yeah, you get the
I didn't mind those in the first one as much because I felt like they fit more into what the rest of the story was doing. In the second one is where I was like, all right, there's getting to be a little too much of this, and it's breaking up the pace in a way that I don't think works. Whereas in the first one, I didn't think it was as in the way, I guess.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of my criticism there amongst this great game, and just the traversal with the game as well. The
Oh,
web swinging is so amazing there. What they do with that, and they even ramp it up even more in the second one. With the web wings too, so you can do the combination of swinging, then plus the web wings, which just feels a lot of fun. That's really great there. I don't know why you would
you can
ever
go
fast.
into the. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying in the second one because they didn't do this in the first one. But in the second one, if you go into the options menu, you can turn down swing assist And in the first game, swing assist is it's basically automatically like at 100%. You can't change it. And the second one, you can turn swing assist all the way down, and then it actually has the physics of the old PS2 Spider-Man 2 game, where there needs to be an exact thing that you're attaching the webs to. So like you can change how realistic the physics are for the web swinging in the second one, which I thought was really really cool.
Oh, no, I didn't know you could do that. So yeah, that's an added thing you can do with that game too, as well there. And then like I said, this game highly praised when it came out there. People consider one of the best superhero games ever made. I think I'd still maybe prefer Batman Arkham City maybe over this. It's tough. I still think that one's better for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think Arkham City is out there. There's a few superhero games that would go on that list for me. Like Hulk Ultimate Destruction would also be on, a top five or something like that. This would be two or three though. Probably. I'd have to think about it some more, but it probably either number two or number three.
Yeah. It was incredibly. It was one of the best-selling games with PlayStation 4 of all time there for it. One of the fastest-selling games for the console. So yeah, Marvel Spider-Man. They're really, really great. Yeah. So, Sage, give us your fourth pick.
So number four, so I won't talk about this one as much because we went over it a bit already. But number four for me is Shadow of the Colossus. Well, like I said before, it's just masterpiece of a game. It's an early game to really push people into thinking about video games as like a higher form of art and not just a fun toy. From the fantasy to the art design to the music to kind of even the emotions that the very simple story is able to kind of dredge up, and the sympathy you feel for the creatures that you're fighting, even just so many things about this are just so all around kind of perfect. Yeah, it's one of those all-time favorites that I replay every couple of years.
Mm, yeah. I mean, amazing game there. All these type of different creatures that you battle in this. Yeah, like I said, it almost feels like you say, a puzzle of figuring out how you're gonna actually climb this creature and actually kill it. So that's yeah, really great with that there, and the story of it there of the morality of what you're doing. I think is also very interesting there. So that was your fourth one. So I'm gonna give my fourth one here, and that is for a game that just recently got a remake, and that remake was also highly praised. Um, Final Fantasy 7 there,
Mm,
and this is the OG Final Fantasy 7 back on the PlayStation 1 days, back when they had blocks for hands.
little
You had
paintbrushes.
little
Remember
paintbrushes
that?
there. Cloud had those little paintbrush for hands. Yeah, I mean, this was, groundbreaking. I mean, when this came out on the PlayStation there, people clown the graphics now, but yeah, back then when this was out, the graphics were, especially how big this was and expansive this was, and you had this came on
Mind blowing.
mind blowing. This came out on two. I think how many discs? It was 3 discs, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was three.
3 disc when it came out. You got this hefty, yeah. When you went into the store, bought it, it was like 3 discs. It was huge. Yeah, it says yeah, 3 CD-ROMs that were on there.
Three
So yeah,
CD-ROMs.
yeah, it was big there. And yeah, this
I
classic.
guess that makes a lot of sense to break it up into three parts in the remake because then it'll be three discs if you have it physically.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got that. And what they did with the remake is also incredibly impressive too. I mean, they just didn't remake. I mean, they also expanded the story there with the remake. So they just didn't do like, hey, we're gonna copy the same story over again. They did a lot with that. But
It was
yeah,
a real sequel, even.
yeah, but this was like epic storytelling here with this video game when it's out. And then of course, classic Final Fantasy combat there, the turn-based combat that you had in this game. This was, it made me interested in more Final Fantasy games, but none I've liked as much as this one. I mean, this one it was just top tier for me. With that, with just the cast of characters that you had here, with the story kind of going on. I mean, Sephiroth, great villain, one of the greatest video game villains of all time. But yeah, awesome stuff there. And I'm a sucker for a dude with a gigantic sword. I mean, that's just always that's pretty badass there. I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, and that sword Cloud has was taken directly from Berserk. Like that, Berserk really created the dude with the giant sword trope, and it's like the same sword. If you look it up and compare, it's like exactly the same sword.
Yeah. Any thoughts you have on Final Fantasy?
Oh yeah, no, I mean this is a masterpiece of its time. Yeah, it's one that was almost made it onto my list a couple times, and there were other things that I just kind of pushed it down as I was deciding what I felt just was my favorite stuff. But it was in consideration for my list, and it is a masterpiece. It is able to do so much at such an early point in video games. It's able to do so much with its technology. Like I said, the graphics were incredibly impressive at the time. It's such a big game, such a big world. And it does make me sometimes miss like the turn-based RPG sometimes today, because I think there's a lot of value to being able to have like maybe, slightly simpler, less flashy combat, but being able to, take that, have that be smaller, and then use it to tell this absolutely massive story around it. This is an Xbox game, so we're not talking about today, but I feel similarly about the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic that was on the original Xbox. Very similar to Final Fantasy VII, where it was like just this massive game for its time that was able to do so much with the technology that in a lot of other games might have felt a lot more limiting. Like you maybe, not able to do so epic a thing, but this just it was able to use all of the limitations to its own advantage.
Yeah. And when this game came out, it landmark title there. People can say one of the greatest, most influential video games of all time. This came out in 1997. It won numerous video game of the year awards there, and I think really pushed forward what video games can be and could do. I think Final Fantasy VII really did that. I mean, it was very, very highly impressive with that. So, you're going to give us your number three there, Sage.
Number three for me, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. This is another one of those games that I remember the lead up to, the build up to it coming out, just the absolute just excitement, the awe it inspired in me of like, wow, a video game can do this much, can be this technically impressive, it can tell a story that's this engaging and fun and just full of personality. And I think it's aged incredibly well. I mean, this is like going back and watching an old Pixar movie to go back and replay today, visually and gameplay wise and aesthetically in the music. And it really established Nathan Drake to me as like the true kind of modern successor to an Indiana Jones type figure, and able to really tell a story that was as fun as even when I was even younger than this, watching those Indiana Jones movies for the first time as a kid. And this is in some of the other games in this franchise, but especially two, is like it's like some of the only time I've ever felt that same feeling I did on originally watching Indiana Jones. It's able to do so much with its mythology and the mythology of the history around it, and it of course fictionalizes stuff and exaggerates, and it makes this a very over the top kind of version of history. But I think what's cool about it too, and this goes for the whole franchise, is it is kind of telling you two stories at once, because you have what Nathan Drake is doing, Sully and Elena and this cast of characters around them, but it's also kind of telling you this historical story of, say, in this game, Marco Polo and the journey that he went on to cover this up and to do this, without spoiling the whole thing, to kind of accomplish this goal and to kind of hide these things back in the day. And so it's I think it's very cleverly kind of giving you two narratives at once, in as well as it's doing both of them in just this really incredibly engaging way, from cinematic camera angles to the way that it handles big set piece action scenes. It's like, I mean, to this day, very few people have been able to do it as well as they have.
Yeah. I love this game, one of my favorite video games of all time there. Like you said, I mean, kind of one of the true successors to Indiana Jones there when everybody tried to do the Indiana Jones ripoff type story there. I mean, the only one's been able to do it as well, or maybe come half as be half as good, come half as close there is The Mummy from 1999, I think.
Yeah.
You had that kind of going on. But yeah, I mean, Nolan North, who is a guy that would pop up in every video game you like. There's probably Nolan North or Trey Baker there,
Troy Baker.
Troy
Yeah,
Baker there. They're always somewhere there in every goddamn video game for the last
always.
10, 20 years now.
They're
Um,
brothers in the fourth one.
Yeah, I mean, so they even combined 2 of the greatest. That's like getting, like, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro on Godfather Part 2. It's like, damn, you got 2 of the biggest actors right there in a movie. But, yeah, I mean, this was fantastic, and, talked about Final Fantasy of, like, that kinda had the thing of, like, epic cinematic type of storytelling there. This had that movie type feel of it, where, so many things of it, like the action sequences in this game, the train sequence, or where he's, like, the scene in the trailer where he's running away from the car and he's shooting it. You have that. I mean, there's so many just like, yeah, this feels like a movie. You're playing a blockbuster movie here just at home. Now the movie itself, it wasn't a blockbuster movie, but you had that going for it. But yeah, yeah. So this was fantastic of a game there. Absolutely love it. So yeah, that was your third pick, and I'm gonna go to my third pick. Is a game that you already brought up already, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. And that is going to be for The Last of Us. The Last of Us Part One. There, yeah, for all the things you kind of mentioned with this, I mean, Naughty Dog, I mean, they do that. I mean, they feels like they really push storytelling in video games and what video games can be and what video games can do. You mentioned like how much of Uncharted had that kind of like I said, movie feel to it. This also did, like you mentioned, Children of Men, like your post-apocalyptic kind of storytelling there, and it's really well done. And also coming up with this creature of the clickers there, they're not just your generic zombie type figures. I think they have their own kind of uniqueness to them. The sound they make, the sound in this game is really good. The sound of the clicking there is really good with that, and the look of them, like the different various creatures there of them, is also really good. And also the human element, the cast of characters here. One of the best video games I've seen with just such a robust cast of characters that you see in this game. All are very interesting and very well written. I have not played the sequel to this. That's still my backlog there, but I will get to it one of these days. But yeah, also probably one of the best opening sequences of any video game ever. How that opens up, really, really good
Absolutely.
sequence there. So Sage, you're gonna give us your second pick there.
Number two, it's another two as well. God of War 2 for the PlayStation 2.
Mm,
This is still, in my mind, the best game in this particular franchise. For everything that we just talked about with Uncharted capturing film so well, The Last of Us also capturing film so well, Spider-Man and Infamous capturing superheroes so well. Nothing else has ever captured an ancient mythology so well in video games. To truly give you this, in some ways barbaric, in some ways tragically beautiful in other aspects, and people really, I think a lot of people like to kind of, especially if they've only played the newer ones, really kind of think of the stories of these games only having gotten deep or emotionally complex with the newest ones and the kind of softer reboot of the 2018 game. But I think there's a lot of great storytelling here in the original series. I think Kratos is a fantastic character. He's just at the darkest point in his life, and so it's a little more brutal and harsh. But I think there is a lot of great character expressed in all of the anger that he has in this game. Um, and this one is the one where it's like you really stop, like you're playing it and you're like, stop poking the bear. Like you're saying this to all the other characters. Like in the first one, it's one thing because it's like, hey, he's been wronged to a lot himself, and hey, I get where he's coming from. And then in this one, it's like they keep screwing him over more and more and more. And it's like, guys, stop. He's going to snap so much harder than you can even realize. And just from like, the opening of the game, starting with the Colossus of Rhodes boss battle and the scale. I mean, the fact that it was able to achieve scale like that just on the PlayStation 2 to me is so incredible. Sure, is God of War 3, technically more impressive on like a visual level? It is. But I think that this was able to achieve something similar to some of those sequences, but on the PlayStation 2 is very impressive. Or when you get to the big island of the Fates, and there's that long shot where the horses, the like statues of the horses come out of the water, and you can see how big the island is, and you have to walk across the chain. I mean, this game was able to create a sense of scale so that God of War 3 could run away with it even more, right? But this really was able to do such an amazing job with it. It also depicts so much great mythology. You get like all these great flashbacks with. I think the CG cutscenes in this hold up and look really good still. The all of the backstory of Zeus and all of the narrative with the Titans and how the Greek gods overcame the Titans and kind of became the gods and came to rule the world. And so it's not only are you getting like this new story and the story of Kratos, but you're also getting a lot of just like actual like older Greek mythology stories, like a rendition of them that is epic. It's like truly epic. And I mean that's something I've talked about before with films, and I think that it's very rare that you really get a Greek mythology film or really a movie on any of the true old world mythologies that's actually as epic and cool and aesthetically amazing as I think they could be. And this game, honestly, to me, shows up like all of like Hollywood's attempts that they've ever done to depict Greek mythology on screen.
Yeah. I won't even go into my number 2 because this is my number 2. So I won't even do that there. So, yeah, I mean, for all the things that you said with this, this is one of my favorite video games of all time, period. Absolutely love this game. And I was trying to decide, which God of War I wanted to put on here. All of them are really amazing and really great, I think. And I could have maybe put the God of War 2018, maybe honorable mention there.
That
Um,
would have been my second favorite, I think, in the franchise.
Yeah. So I there, but all of these are really fantastic. But yeah, I mean, what this does with combat, we talked about Devil May Cry 3 and how that was such a huge kind of leap in the hack and slash genre. This also took that and then give it an extra leap there with all they do here in this genre. The Blades of Chaos are probably one of the best weapons in all of video games that Kratos uses there.
Oh yeah.
It's there's a lot of fun weapons you use in this game and various throughout the various God of War games, but nothing beats the Blade of Chaos. I think those are just absolutely fantastic and great to use there. The voice work from TC Carson, who was the original voice actor for Kratos, does an amazing job. I mean, he has a very distinctive thing. Christopher Judge is also great in his own way as Kratos. There's a much older Kratos coming in there, so he's also very fantastic there. This is yeah, I mean, and this came out in '07. So this was kind of people, yeah, they were saying
The
like this,
PS3 was out when this game released on the PS2.
yeah. So people said this was like the last great thing to come out of the PlayStation 2 was God of War 2. It was
The
on a
hell of a
lot of
swan song.
yeah. It was on a lot of year-end lists of greatest games there. And then the game had sold 4.24 million units by June 2012, making it the 16th best-selling PlayStation video game of all time there. One of the greatest video games of all time. When you mention the PlayStation 2, the first game people are probably going to mention is God of War. I mean, that's probably going to be the first game that they mention with that one. But yeah, I mean, also the telling of this, of the Greek mythology. I mean, a lot of kids learn Greek mythology through probably God of War and everything like that, and what's gonna happen.
They
But
also, I know kids my age probably learned what threesomes were because of God of War.
yeah, the sex mini games that were in here, they don't make games like that no more. You know what I
No,
mean?
they don't.
And also this game was also big for like the quick time events, you had
Yeah.
in this game here.
Well, and it did them well because there were a lot of games that did quick time events, and it was like, you're kind of taken away from the gameplay by taking control away from the player. But God of War just had this perfect balance of when they would do a quick time event and the visuals that they would have going on screen during the quick time events were always just so impressive that like it was like the best quick time events that a video game did do.
Yeah, because it was, this epic kind of big, final like, when you would kill a boss there, kill an enemy there, you hit the thing there, and you would kill an enemy, and it like you said, most quick time events, it feels like, it's just a lazy way to take control away from the player, but here it feels like it's a good finale to all that combat you've done, throughout the game, with that, so I think that was very good there. So that was my second one, and then you got your very number 1 pick there, top spot, and this should be a surprise
Award
to
for
nobody.
least political game.
Yeah, and this should be a surprise to nobody if anybody's been listening to you or the channel there.
Yeah.
Sage, what is your number 1 game for the PlayStation?
Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. I think this game is just so unbelievably good and tight and well constructed, innovative in its gameplay systems and unique in ways that even other stealth games have just never really replicated outside of this franchise. And you know, the Metal Gear stories are also, I think they're all good pretty much across the board. But three, I think, really has something special where it goes, you know, we go back in time to the 60s. We kind of do an origin story for one of the big villains of the franchise, the man that Solid Snake is a clone of. Really go back into the origins of all of this, and it tells such a great and thoughtful political narrative about how countries treat their soldiers and the way in which like human life and the humanity of infantry and military is kind of thrown away by leaders, and the kind of destabilizing situations that come from mass disillusionment from within the militaries of a country. It's got such a great personal arc for these characters, but it also explores these really big, you know, kind of on a global scale human themes, that I think are just so well done and so interesting and mature, and that it also, you know, it also allows itself to be goofy in just the right way at the right times, and because it's, you know, it's Hideo Kojima, it's also completely batshit insane in just the right way. I mean, for all of the serious political intrigue I'm talking about, there's also a boss in this game who's a dude made out of bees that shoots shapeshifts into bees and then shoots bees at you with a gun made out of bees. So like, there's also ridiculous stuff like that. How could you not love
Yeah. And if people want to see more of your thoughts on Metal Gear Solid 3, you did do a retro review for it that's up on the channel now. Just type in the afternoon tune, type in Metal Gear Solid 3, and you'll be able to find your full thoughts on it there. And a remake is going to be coming of this game. I think supposedly next year, maybe.
it? They've yet to really commit to a solid release date yet, or a time that it's kind of coming out. They really want to be careful with that remake. You know, Konami, obviously, there was a lot of bad will with the players in Konami, kind of around the time Metal Gear Solid 5 was coming out. And it seems like this team is, they really want to be careful. They really want to release something that feels like a finished product and take their time with it. And I say, great. Don't release it until you're 100% sure this is a finished project. It's 100% ready. You know, the remake is using all of the same voice acting. They're not recording new lines. It's all the same. So actors that have passed away, it's still those actors. Like, they are literally reusing the voice recording, taking all of that from the original game. The geometry of the actual levels is the same. They're improving the visuals and they are improving the control scheme and making that a little more fluid for people to get into. But it is going to be one of those remakes that's like, you could almost call it a remaster, but it is a remake because it is sticking so faithfully to the original, and I think that's a very good choice for something like this, where you know, there's only a few big like auteur creators in the game industry, and Hideo Kojima is one of them. And I think if you're gonna remake um like a game made by someone like that, where there's so many specific things and he's got such a fingerprint on the identity of it, if you're going to remake that, you got to be careful. You got to try and be faithful to it. The other option is like Max Payne is getting a remake, and well, Sam Lake is just the guy who did that back in the day, and he's just working on the new one. So there's your other options, to just have the original creators involved. But if you can't get them, like Konami definitely wasn't getting Kojima to come work on this project. He's got plenty of his own stuff going on. Uh, I think this sort of hyper faithful approach is the right choice for something like this.
Yeah. So that was your favorite PlayStation game of all time there. And my favorite PlayStation game, my number one spot there is a game that you already mentioned there. And is one of my favorite video games of all time, if not the probably, yeah, I'd say top video game for me of all time. It'd be for Uncharted 2 Among Thieves there. Yeah, when I played this game, I was hyped. I immediately beat this game and then played it again after I beat it. I mean, it was just that good. And just like I said, even this sequence right here, which I think is the beginning sequence of the game, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cold open. It's just straight up cold open.
Yeah. And this game, I mean, for the storytelling, as you mentioned before, of what it did of there, of, with that, of like, hey, it feels like a blockbuster movie, with it. So like you're playing it. this Indiana Jones type figure of Nathan Drake. The combat in and of itself, I mean, I think it's okay. I mean, it's okay, decent third person shooting combat that you have here. I think really the main standout of this is the climbing mechanics of it that are so kind of
Yeah,
really revolutionary there with this, especially coming after something like Prince of Persia, which also that was huge for the gaming industry. Those climbing mechanics there, and I think this takes it a step above that. Nolan North does a fantastic job as Nathan Drake there. Probably Nathan Drake is, to me, I think one of the greatest video game characters of all time. And he just doesn't feel like, hey, he's Indiana Jones or Han Solo. He's got kind of his own thing. He's very much a very Han Solo type figure, but he's got his own, I think, kind of identity and kind of thing there. So the writing team of Uncharted really did a great job there. Um, and then there's the
Amy
sequel.
Hennig, another, maybe she's not recognized as like a video game auteur, necessarily. She doesn't have maybe as big a fingerprint on everything that she does as maybe someone like Kojima does, where it's like you can tell that was his decision, like every 5 seconds. But Amy Hennig, still is a name that I think often does not get brought up or given enough credit to what she has done in the games industry. And yeah, I mean, Uncharted. I mean, of course, there's a team of writers, and I don't want to intentionally like leave anybody out, but I do think that she really lends so much of what made this game so great in its personality, its characters, its writing. Yeah, she's someone I wish people would talk about more.
Yeah, and the third one was good. I think if I had to say a second best one for this franchise, I'd say for me would be the fourth one. I think the fourth one's a really great
Yeah, I agree.
swan song to it, to the Uncharted franchise there with this. But all the games I think are very good, and I think all are very worthy of playing there to finish out the story there and to see the Nathan Drake character evolve from the first game all the way to the first game all the way to the fourth game. I think is really great. And like I said, great cast of characters that you have here with Sully. I mean, great mentor figure there. With Elena, great love interest with her, and she's got her own thing and own kind of story going on, which I think is really fantastic. So yeah, I love
I mean,
everything about.
Claudia Black as Chloe was like the perfect, you know, bad girl, like secondary love interest character to bring into.
Yeah, his Catwoman, Black Cat type figure that he in here.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Is that there? And I even like the spinoff game that they did
I
there.
actually like that more than the first or third one. I would say I'd put that after two,
Mm.
4 spinoff. 1 and 3, I have a hard time deciding between. But
Yeah. And you can get the games bundled together because there's the Nathan Drake collection that you can get, where you can get them kind of bundled together. The first,
yeah, the Nathan Drake collection is 1, 2, 3, and
yeah,
then they also did I forget what they called it, but they also did a like PS5 upgrade for Uncharted 4 and then the Lost Legacy spinoff. So if you could play those on PS5, that was also came together as a bundle, and then I believe that that bundle also came out on the PC as well.
yeah. So Lost Legacy was a spinoff game, and you played
Yeah.
Nadine and Claudia there. Who Nadine was in the? She showed up in the fourth one, right?
Yeah, she's one of the antagonists in 4. She is like the military power that the main villain is paying to be, his like henchman or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, I like her as well. Yeah, they do a great job with yeah all the characters here with that. So yeah, Uncharted 2 among thieves is my top PlayStation game of all time. Yeah. So that was our list there. Great
All
list
right.
from Sage there. Great list. A lot of great games. I still got to check out some of these games that are on his list, like Ghost of Tsushima and Bloodborne. So yeah, I got to check out those. But yeah, talking about these, making this list made me want to go back and play a lot of these games again, and play them again.